for specific countries? Thank you.
Well, once we engage with a country, it becomes part of our national data set. So in that sense, we do it every year, and that country will be included every year. And like I said, if you look at it on our website, you'll see that there are more than 150 countries involved there. And if we engage with a new collaboration with a country, then they become included after that year, those year's findings. And as far as the production of a country, so you mean if a country is creating a product but it's based in a different country, that ecological footprint of production then gets allotted to the country that it's produced in because it's using those resources. And similarly, the ecological footprint of a country, if the United States is importing something from China, that ecological footprint of consumption is credited to the United States because they're the country that is consuming those resources.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Interesting. And in particular, about Japan case. I'm saying this because these ecological footprints tend to favor less populating countries like Australia and Canada as compared to densely populated countries like Japan and Indonesia and others. If you look at this per capita ecological footprint, Australia's footprint per capita is bigger than Japan, but Australia's ecological footprint credit country, but Japan debt country. And therefore, if you use this index to compare countries, that's very not really, representing the level of consumption. And generally speaking, Asian countries are very much mistreated if these indicators are applied to Asian countries, because Asian countries, generally speaking, densely populated.
Right.
That is the first question. And then why still Japan has formally adopted this indicator? That is the question I'd like to ask.
Why did it adopt?
Yeah, for Japan, as a country, if to use these indicators, that would not be good for Japan, perhaps. And then you mentioned a little bit about this export-related interest, in terms of food. The food import from various countries, and then perhaps it will reveal that Japan's food import may have created a lot of impact in countries in this region or others, right? And therefore, that will give a kind of indication that importation of such food is not really good for sustainable development. Therefore, Japan should promote more agricultural production within Japan. Is it the kind of interest Japan has? And since I do not know, so if you could explain, that would help.
Okay, let me see if I have this all right. And in relation to your first question regarding Asian countries, our data is based on UN statistics, and a lot of times, not a lot, but sometimes they reveal surprising results. So in those cases, we really do urge the national government to work with us so we can use more detailed data, in-country data, because what those are based on, if we're not involved, if we're not in an active collaboration with the government, is UN statistics and based on world average biocapacity. So what happens sometimes is that the government will contact us and say this isn't reflective of what's really going on in the country. So then we work with them and we work with their in-country data, and oftentimes the data is explained. You can see exactly why there was a spike in any one area, or we can the methodology is refined using that more detailed data, and the results become more reflective of the reality in the country. Why Japan adopted the footprint? Well, they adopted it in 2005, and I can't say what went behind that adoption. I wasn't even with Global Footprint Network at the time, but I know that national governments, when they formally adopt the ecological footprint, is because they want to identify their ecological risks, and they want some kind of measurement tool to manage their natural resources. They also want a way to be able to see how other countries are how their ecological situation is, because if they are trading with them actively, they want to be able to identify whether they're being too dependent on a country that's facing depleting resources as well. And they also find opportunities to collaborate with each other. You know, how can we continue to trade in a way that's sustainable for both of our governments, that will contribute to the well-being of both of our economies and both of our social well-beings. Export, import. I'm not sure, you're talking about food, you said, in particular. Right.
In terms of ecological footprint, Japan import a lot of sustainability or whatever footprint from other countries, then create negative impacts upon these exporting countries. And therefore, if it is the fact, the indication, then that would mean that Japan should not import that much food from other countries. Is that the intention?
No, it's not the intention to stop trade altogether. Japan does import a lot of food because in general its biocapacity is pretty low. It exports a lot of fish as well. There are a lot of countries dependent on Japan's fish. So the intention is not to say stop importing, stop exporting altogether. It's understand where the ecological risks are. Just one example, in Japan, what we found from their footprint, this isn't food, but their forestry footprint was so low that they could afford to really increase production of products from their forests. But what we found was they were instead importing a lot of forest products from Indonesia, which is facing deforestation. So that's one area where really Japan has an opportunity to increase its domestic production and not rely on a country that's facing deforestation, which it continues to do. So those are the things that we hope to do with these kinds of indicator tools, not to say stop in any way, but really identify where the risks are and the opportunities.
So that's why ecological footprint tend to be regarded as anti-trade, right?
Yes, I suppose that's why, but that's not so. It's data-based. We don't advocate one way or the other.
Any more questions, please?
The biocapacity measure has been one that has been quite controversial, I think, in terms of the underpinning data. I think the recent work by the Stockholm Environment Institute on the planetary boundaries and the indicators to measure the planetary boundaries actually has considerable potential to enrichen the notion of biocapacity by breaking it down into ecosystem boundaries or ecological service boundaries. Has there been any thought to perhaps breaking out the biocapacity measure into its component elements?
We do break them up. You mean as far as carbon and then forestry and cropland and no?
No, these would be the ecosystem. These would be the ecosystem services like climate change, biodiversity loss,
yes.
the nitrogen cycle,
Right.
the phosphate cycle, ozone depletion,
Yes.
those sorts of areas.
Yeah, actually we do have a partner network of more than 900 organizations around the world. I don't know if we mentioned that, but we realize that our tool is not to be the be-all, end-all. It's a complementary tool to the GDP, to the water footprint, to other ways of measuring carbon footprint. So in areas like that, when we don't go down to that level, we do rely on our partner network to supply that information. And in the next 5 years, we're really going through a campaign to improve our science and technology, which includes more refined input-output measurements and more scenario tools and what you're talking about as well.
Darlene, person Gunther.
I think, Peter, what you referred to can be seen with New Zealand in this chart. New Zealand is assigned a biocapacity 150 times higher, 150% of what is used, and then New Zealand is assigned in